being part of a people, a community, means taking on the behaviors of those around us. We learn as children that in the middle of a baseball game, seventh inning, we sing, "Take me out to the ball game." It's commonly accepted that we say things like please and thank you when interacting with others. And everyone knows that if Shabbat services begin at 9:30 a.m., that one can wander in at 10, 10:30, or even 11 a.m. Just kidding. Some customs are not entirely positive. But how do we know those things? Who began those practices and how did they evolve? How do we know what we know? One of the things that binds Jews together as a community across time and space is a set of common understandings about how to believe or behave. For example, in Parshat Re'eh this week, the Torah provides us with the definitions and principles that shape a distinctively Jewish approach to eating. Given how complex Jewish tradition is in the realm of food, it can come as quite a shock to see just how little information the Torah provides about kashrut, the dietary laws. In short, only those land animals with split hooves and which chew their cud, only those sea animals that have both fins and scales, and a specific list of animals of the air are permitted as food. The Torah also forbids consuming animals that have died naturally, which is to say roadkill, even among those permitted animals. And it then concludes the section by demanding, famously, "You shall not boil a kid, a young goat or sheep, in its mother's milk." Elsewhere, the Torah adds other details, such as the prohibition against consuming blood, but the single paragraph in this parsha covers most of what the text has to teach us about distinctively Jewish eating. So much is left unsaid that it was left to our sages to explain just how to implement this system on a daily basis. The majority of the laws of kashrut derive not from the written law of the Torah, but from oral tradition. The early rabbis used a complex system of textual analysis to derive those rulings based on the assumption of the divine origins of the Torah. For example, since the phrase, "You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk," appears 3 times in total in the Torah, here and in 2 other locations, but using the exact same language, the early rabbis understood that the Torah actually teaches us 3 distinct aspects of the laws of separating milk and meat. 1, that we should not cook meat and milk together. 2, that we should not eat milk and meat together. And 3, that we should not derive profit from the cooking of milk and meat together. Now, it's not unreasonable to question the sage's methodology here. How do we know that a threefold repetition means 3 different things, or that it means these particular 3 things? Is that idea self-evident in the text of the Torah, or is it rather an oral tradition passed down from the time of Moses? Or instead a product of interpretation on the part of the rabbis? How do we know, as Jews, what we know? There are multiple mutually reinforcing ways to know what it means to be part of the Jewish people. The Torah might seem like a good place to start, but in reality it's usually the last source we consider. Usually the words of the most recent sages and the accepted practice of the community is our first source. Then we go backwards through the early modern period, the medieval period, and into the Talmud. Finally, if we seek additional understanding, we consider the words of the Torah, the original source of all things Jewish. As Jews, we know that what we need to know is not only from the Tanakh, from the Hebrew Bible, but through a long textual tradition and through accepted practice. We know what we know because we expend a great deal of mental energy studying and analyzing all of these sources to understand how we came to be who we are and to have a sense of who we yet may be. It's never enough to simply accept and repeat the customs we've inherited. Our job as Jews is to constantly re-engage with tradition in order to learn the will of the living God in our own time and in order to know what we should know for the future. From East Brunswick Jewish Center and me, Rabbi Jeff Paivo, a Shabbat Shalom.